standing by.
Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. You are live, you are live.
Good morning everybody, and welcome to this relatively chillsome early winter morning here in the northeastern corner of magnificent South Africa. From the Cape Town in our far southwestern corner up to the Loskop Dam, somewhere near the north of Messina, you are most welcome to what is known as the world's most beautiful country, mostly by the residents of that country, but still, it's a magnificent place to find ourselves. You are on a live safari as the dawn chorus starts to break. Here in the Kruger National Park, we're on the western fringes of that. Djuma is the little reserve that we call home. To the west of us, Arathusa, to the east of us, Cheetah Plains, and those make up the 8,000 acres that we're going to be exploring over the next 3 hours or so. My name is James Henry. On camera today is Wium. That is Wium's sparkly new morning thumb. And on the other vehicle, hopefully she's yet to get going because she's got a couple of technical glitches, the great Jamie Patterson, and she's being filmed by Jeandre Mowgli Gerding. In the final control, speaking in my ear, I have Louise Pavid, and helping her, Rebecca the Dane. That's the team for the morning. Off to the eastern side, the sun is about to come up, probably only in about 20 minutes actually, so we've got 20 minutes of this very special dawn light that I think is my favorite time of the day. Our plan is to head up to the north of the reserve. Jamie's going to go to the south. We heard lions calling all over the place during the course of the morning from about 4:30, and we're pretty sure, unfortunately, that when they were calling, they were off this particular reserve, which we can't cross out of, but they can cross on at any stage. So with any luck, we'll find some tracks. But even if we don't find one sign of lions, there will be many interesting things to find over the course of the next 3 hours. So please stay where you are. Thank you for joining us on this Saturday morning or Friday evening, where if you happen to be in the United States, or might even be almost Sunday if you're talking to us from Fiji. You are welcome to ask us questions or give us comments the whole way through. #SafariLIVE or questions at WildEarth.tv. I think both forms of communication are functioning very well at the moment. We did have a couple of issues a few days ago, but I think they're all rectified now. Without further ado, let us continue. Right, yeah, I'm just going to get myself back into place. Right. Crystal, you were asking what the Shangaan term, Shangaan, for those of you who don't know, is the local language here, what the Shangaan term for mystery or secret is. And I don't actually know. Let me think about it. I feel like I've been told it before, but I don't actually know. We can easily ask Amanda, or certainly one of the trackers when we get home. I think the closest I can get is hide. And to hide is to tumbela. So if you want to hide something, you tumbela it. But that's the closest I think I can get to mystery or secret. Thank you, Crystal. Hello, Scott and Dara in Ohio. You thought you were going to be very clever there, didn't you? You said I gave you the temperature in Celsius, and I gave you the temperature in Fahrenheit, and could I give it to you in Kelvin? Now, I must confess to you that Louise has given it to me in my ear, but without that, the temperature in Kelvin, of course, absolute zero, if I'm not mistaken, is minus 274 degrees Kelvin. At least it's zero. It's 0 Kelvin, which is minus 274 degrees centigrade. So if we just take 274 degrees and we add 15 to that, we should get to 289 degrees Fahrenheit, Kelvin. So I think that's what we are. That was my memory of high school chemistry, first year university chemistry, after which I eschewed chemistry for biology. Hit me again, Scott, hit me again. And William, you're in Oregon, where it is unquestionably wetter than it is here right now. We're about to head towards the dry part of the year, not that it's been very wet here at all this year. William, you want to know what the elevation is? The elevation is roughly 400 meters above sea level, and that in feet is about 13 to 1400 feet above sea level. So we're quite low down, but we're not quite at sea level. Up to the mountains there's a town called Belfast, which is the highest town in South Africa, and that's 2,000 meters above sea level, which is about 6,500 feet above sea level, so that's pretty high. And my hometown, Johannesburg, is a mile-high city, much like Denver in Colorado. So that's where we sit here. The highest point in the Kruger National Park is about double the height here. I think it's around Pretorius Corp. It's about 800 meters above sea level, so even that is not very high. And I think the lowest point is just below 300 meters above sea level. Temperature in Kelvin. I'm deeply impressed with myself that I managed to remember that minus 274 degrees Celsius. Wium, you're supposed to be tracking back there. Hyenas, not lions. No wonder you didn't say anything. You knew that we weren't looking for hyenas, didn't you?
No.
Yes.
I don't look for hyenas.
No. Only cats. Miranda, I don't think that your suggestion is going to be possible. You say, seeing that it's kind of chilly here, I mean, it is kind of chilly, it's hardly freezing, but you say, maybe we'll see some polar bears. Well, of course, that isn't going to happen, as you well know. I'm just trying to consider two things. Firstly, bears in Africa, which I said didn't exist until some very kind soul sent through some wonderful information on something called an Atlas bear, which used to occur in Africa, but then in the Atlas Mountains, so north of the Sahara, which means that bears never cross the south across the Sahara. And so we've never seen a bear in these parts. And likewise, of course, polar bears only in the northern hemisphere on the rapidly shrinking ice sheets of the Arctic Circle. But I know you knew that. Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Scott, very much. You say you're very impressed that I remembered minus 274 degrees Celsius is in Kelvin. Well, I can't believe I remember that either. Of course, for those of you who are wondering what on earth we're talking about, that seems to be the temperature at which scientists measure things. And 0 Kelvin, absolute zero, is the lowest possible temperature in theory. The lowest possible temperature. Minus 274 degrees. And I think liquid nitrogen, if I'm not mistaken, is pretty close to that. So when you liquefy nitrogen, that stuff they use to burn the warts off you, if you've ever had warts burned off, it's not too far off that. And the degrees are exactly the same as they are in Celsius, in Kelvin, if you're interested. So the gap between each degree is precisely the same as it is in centigrade or Celsius. Thank you, Sherry. You say if I'm going to take responsibility for Elvis this morning, then I need to introduce him. Everybody, this is Samwise Gamgee's sort of icon, I suppose. Elvis the elephant. Elvis, I see, has been blessed with some tusks since he and I were last together, and hopefully that will provide me with some form of charm or luck during the course of the day. He's quite a fine fellow, is our Elvis. I'm not sure he was designed by a man who'd ever been an elephant before, but we get the general idea. His eyes are quite high up on his head. You see that, Wium? He looks like I might have carved him. Right, we're into the clearings here where I was hoping to find a great carpet of roaring beasts. Nothing but barren wastelands at the moment. And up until about 2 weeks ago, this was green. In fact, a week ago, this was green. And now it has gone brown. Wium, look, there's an impala. Let us not beg. Let us use the old cliche of beggars not being choosers. Good morning, Mr. Impala. It's very nice framing there with that green bush. Very nice film, well done. Yep. Now these impalas right in the middle of the rut at the moment. When Wium brings the camera back onto you, it means he's had enough of the animal in question and it's time to press on. Brenda, you're a new viewer, and it's lovely to have you along. Thank you for giving us of your time, and thank you for asking us a question. You want to know how this live stream works. Brenda, the technicalities of it are well beyond my brain power, but I will tell you that it is basically like a mobile sports broadcast. So, you've watched a mobile sports broadcast, live sports broadcast, or you've watched a live news show. It's exactly the same principle. The difficulty here, and why it hasn't been done very often before, and what our technical department has managed to achieve, is that we're moving. So if you are at a live sports broadcast, what happens is that you've got a number of static cameras, you've got a big truck outside, which isn't moving, and it's sending a signal to a satellite, which then beams out either into your TV or through the internet into your TV, or through a traditional broadcast medium into your TV. Here, obviously the signal is coming off a moving object. And so there's a camera, there's a whole lot of very complicated equipment in the back of the vehicle, and it goes out of an antenna at the back into a repeater station, which is then feeds into the final control, which is not mobile, it's not moving. And that's a bit like the truck, I suppose, that you would have outside a live sports broadcast, and then it goes to a satellite and out from there to the rest of the world. But the difficulty of something like this is getting a high-quality, high-definition signal out of a mobile vehicle. As far as I understand it, that's the technical genius behind what the tech team has managed to achieve here. That's as far as, I'm afraid, as my knowledge of the technology goes. Thank you, Brenda. But you are live. We still get the odd doubting Thomas every so often that comes onto the show and says, this can't be live. Look, I can prove it's not live. See, there's a lion over there. And then we have to say to them, no, Thomas, the doubter, we are live. We wouldn't be live. You wouldn't hear us talking about it if we weren't. Elaine, you are interested in how big the paws on a male lion are, and basically that is how big they are. They are the same size as my hand. I'm not a very large man, but I'm not a very small man either. So they're about the size of my hand. Let's just wait for those. There were some hornbills there that were eating in the dung, fossicking about in the dung of the elephants on the road. and they took fright, I'm afraid. Elaine, if we find a track, I'll show you exactly how big they are. But basically, they're the size of a slightly smaller than average man's hand. Nope. No, hyenas. I suppose otherwise my tracker would have seen them.
Checking the bushes.
Hmm?
Checking the bushes.
You're checking the bushes. Okay, well, thank you. Our signal may get a little bit dodgy here, so if it does, I apologize in advance. And Safari Dean, thank you for your concern, and the answer is negative. I did not. You want to know if I found my stick, my walking stick, and the answer is no, I did not find my walking stick. I'm going to have to fashion another one. I'm very sad about it. That stick lasted almost a year. I must just tell you, though, that... oh, look. Isn't that cool? That's what the impala do when they're rutting, and we very seldom get to see them doing it like that. And if you didn't know that that was an impala making that noise, if you were just walking through the bush and you heard that, I bet you'd think that some enormous vicious predator was about to emerge from the bushes and bite you. But it is the humble impala advertising his presence and sort of marking his territory. And Kay Ward, you say, what is rutting? And what I'm going to ask you to do, Kay, is... let me just move into a position here. Rutting basically is fighting over mating opportunities. That's what rutting is. And this chap, who's now hiding behind the bush, if you watch him carefully, if you look at him carefully, he's got black eyes, he's got bruises around his face. He's now marking his territory with what's called a preorbital gland, which is a gland below the eyes. And he's been fighting. You can see the little scar behind his ears. I'm sure that's from another impala's horns. His neck is thick. And he's been fighting. It's this time of year that they rut, they fight, they chase the females, they bash horns with each other in order to fight for mating opportunities. And that is what rutting is. And a lot of the impala are looking a little bit stiff around the front end. So they're walking along, that's a fork-tailed drongo flying down to eat the insects or invertebrates that impala has disturbed. A lot of the impala, I think, are walking sort of stiffly in front. I think their shoulders, their chests, and their heads, and their neck muscles are all very stiff after a long season of fighting with each other. Right, Jamie is online. She's mobile. Let's go and find out from her what her plans are for the morning.
Good morning, and we've also been distracted by the antics of the impala rams. In this glorious morning sunlight, two slightly younger males enjoying a practice sparring session in the cool of the morning. Oh, this is actually quite a vigorous sparring session. And those slightly shorter horns can actually do some rather serious damage, as you can imagine. They're a bit straighter, almost dagger-like. It's not unheard of for impalas to lose an eye. It's like poor old Nelson, the one-horned, one-eyed impala that we saw over the last few months. Listening carefully in the morning, you can actually hear the sound of their horns clashing together. Now, when ngala spar like this, the aim of the game is to actually pin your opponent's head down towards the ground. With impala, it's a slightly different technique to sort of twist and turn your opponent around. But it is incredible to watch their athleticism. Yes, we're talking about you. And we've actually got 2 more sparring off to our... Oh, they've just decided to stop. And this group of bachelor impala enjoying a morning exercise session. Now, for these young rams, the chances of them having an opportunity to have a mating session is relatively slim, unless they are particularly sneaky and manage to find a female that is maybe not as well guarded as the others. Perhaps she strayed a little bit further. But the dominant rams that have collected a harem to themselves are very, very careful to make sure that none of the females go astray. They spend most of their time making that ridiculous grunting, roaring sound and chasing the poor females backwards and forwards, basically herding them and shepherding them together. Now, to me, the ram on the left looks slightly bigger. He seems to have the upper hand. Oh, no, come back out from that, behind that tree. A little hop, skip and jump there. Now, Marsha, as we watch these impala rams basically letting loose some of the energy that has been stored up by that increase of testosterone, you were wondering how long it takes the rams for their testosterone levels to return back to normal. And the answer is it's usually around the end of July. They seem to, it extends for quite a considerable period after the females have gone out of estrus. Of course, there's essentially 2 sessions where they can mate with the females. One is where the females come into their first estrus, and if the ewe falls pregnant, her estrus cycle will be done. But if she doesn't, she will go into a second period of estrus, which means that the rut is extended to around the middle of June.
Morning, mobile session. Rutting update, please.
And after that, the impala rams can start to relax and we get that return to the breeding herd structure that we are so used to seeing. Oh, quick phlegm and grimace. Much larger impala ram on his way to investigate their antics. As they skip around him, they are of no threat to him. Miranda, you were asking something similar about how long the rutting period will last. As I said, the second estrus cycle will finish around the middle of June, possibly even extending into the end of June. So we've got a couple of months, we've got at least a month yet in order to continue watching these surprising antics. Horns clashing. Now, what will be interesting to see, both for Marsha and Miranda, is that in around the birth of the new impala lambs, for some reason the impala rams get a little bit confused by all of the pregnancy hormones floating about, and it actually stirs them into a false rutting period. So around December, January period, we'll actually see similar behavior once again from the rams, not quite as energetic and serious. Nevertheless, one has to feel for them when their testosterone levels go up once again, this time without any hope of reprieve. These bachelor herds are perfect times for these 2-year-old males. They're about 2 years old, judging by the shape and size of the horns. Unlike that much larger ram that walked past, who's close to 3.5, 4. And as I said, unless they manage to sneak in an opportunity, this will be the only way that they will have to exert their energy. And here comes the sunrise, actually, peeking over the horizon. Not quite as chilly as the start of yesterday morning's sunrise safari. I've not had to don a beanie and gloves. Oh, interestingly, apparently the temperature is exactly the same as it was yesterday morning. I personally don't believe it. I'm much warmer than I was yesterday. But in theory, the temperature is 15 degrees centigrade, so 59 in Fahrenheit. Perhaps it is the prospect of exciting lion sightings that is warming us. Already the morning is warming up and things are heating up on the sightings front as well. Let's find out what's happening with James, a buffalo and some hyena.
There's some very interesting stuff going on here, everybody. I just wanted to show you how we discovered it first. On the ground, all over the ground there, you can see where our tracks have ended. And there were hyena tracks everywhere, and we thought something's going on here. Something amazing has happened. There are hyena tracks everywhere. There are buffalo tracks everywhere. We drove along. We stopped. And that's what we found. And there were hyenas feeding on it, and then suddenly they moved away. And I just wonder if it wasn't maybe the sight of a lion? Let's just wait here. They're in the bushes not far from here. So we'll sit quietly and just wait for them. It's not a buffalo, it's a wildebeest. So although there are buffalo tracks everywhere here, and I don't know, from the tracks on the road here, I would say that these hyenas killed this wildebeest. I don't think they stole it. Here they're coming back slowly now. So this is incredible. I mean, this definitely happened last night. I heard a lot of noise from hyenas. There are no lion tracks here at all. So I'm 99% sure that this wildebeest was killed by the hyenas, who obviously are known as scavengers, but you read about them being highly accomplished hunters. And I think that they hunted this wildebeest on their own. Isn't that amazing? And there we have Africa's second most dominant predator, the spotted hyena. As we found her, Wium said, "Do you think they killed something?" I said, "Well, it certainly looks like they tried." And there it is. A little bit sad it's a wildebeest and not a buffalo. Simply because of course, the buffalo are much more numerous than the wildebeest in this area. I wonder why they were quite so nervous when we got here. It's possible they stole it from a leopard. There's so many buffalo tracks around here, though, that I would be fascinated to know what happened. So maybe a leopard killed this, I don't know, and they stole it from him, but that would be a very large wildebeest for a leopard to kill. So I don't know about that particular theory. But you can see, looking up all the time, and I'll be taking a picular. Thank you, Wium, for demonstrating that. You see that eyes up all the time. And the only thing that will chase these things off a kill like this would be a lion. Now I can hear noise from the den, which is the den is not far from here. And Anna-Marie, absolutely, it is amazing how belly full they get. They look so fat when they eat like this. All around, the morning just carries on. Not a good time for the wildebeest. But so it goes out here, I'm afraid. If you happen to be a wildebeest. Meg's in California. You say, did they eat the eye but not the rest of the face? Pretty much. But that's, I mean, I don't, that's normal. The eye is very soft, obviously, and it's the rest of the face is pretty hard. So the eye does generally tend to go first. Very hilarious comment from Gag, who says, "Guess that wildebeest didn't see it coming." Gag? Definitely didn't see it coming, no. Didn't see anything coming. It won't be seeing again at all. The days of seeing for this wildebeest are over.
Mobile station.
Paige, you want to know if this is a male or female wildebeest, and I think it's a cow.
Louise so far. You reported there was...
I just need to call this in quickly on the radio. I think it's worth sitting here for at least another 20 minutes or so to see, A, which other hyenas come in, and B, if there isn't a lion or two around the place. See, looking up all the time. It's almost impossible to call anything in on the radio because the amount of talking that goes on. The smell is quite ripe, I have to tell you. Now, Red Dog, a very nice question, because we're not too far from the den here. You say, do they ever take meat back to the den? The answer is yes, they do, if they're dominant. I'm just listening carefully now. Stations, there's a wildebeest that has been killed, but looks like a clan of hyenas at the junction of Buffelshoek Dam, not Buffelshoek Dam, Buffelshoek Cutline, and the Gallagher shortcut at the Buffelshoek sign, just to the west of that position. Animals seem to be moving off, but there is quite a lot of meat left here, visible from the Cutline. So I think let's follow them round to the den. Oh, Wium, is that, bless you, by the way,
Thank you.
is that hyena coming back?
I can't see it.
Let's go around the other side, and we will come back to this position and just see what's going on. So they will take food back to the den if they're dominant. So a dominant female will take, but youngsters and males won't go anywhere near the den with food because the more dominant females will take their food from them. So there's one, that's an adult lying down there. You get that one. Aline, you want to know if they could be nervous because they don't want to share. Absolutely, they could be nervous because they don't want to share, and they most certainly don't want to share. Hyenas are not great sharers. In fact, it's the greatest conflict that hyenas have is over food within the clan. Lois, you reckon that the kill doesn't look as dissected as it would if it was a lion kill, that it looks much more torn apart. The feeding strategy, you know, is very similar between lions and hyenas. They have gone all over this place. So, no, I wouldn't say that, but what I would say is that I don't think there'd be nearly as much left if that had been eaten by lions. I think a pride of lions would have finished that off. Now, our clan of hyenas here is relatively small. Quite a few of the males spend a long time south of where we are. I don't think they would have come up for this. They probably wouldn't have heard what was going on. And so I think you'll find that this was probably fed upon by maybe 8 hyenas or so. And so there's going to be quite a lot left. That's a really nice sighting to find, mainly because it puts paid to the thought that hyenas are only nasty scavengers. Sorry, Corey, I didn't quite copy your question. I'll get Louise to give it to me again. The hyenas all over here. They have been charging about this place all night long. Corey, you want to know, is it normal for their stomachs to be so distended? Yes, it is. Completely normal after they've eaten. There's one of the big females there. Here, we got another one in front of us. It looks like a male. That's one of the males in front of us, I think. And they're going off straight towards the den. There's another one going back towards the kill. So, I mean, they've killed right close to home. It's very convenient for them. Let's go and see what the youngsters are doing. And let's go and see if maybe the matriarch, madam, didn't take something home for her youngsters to eat. They've been all over here as well, charging up and down. There was obviously enormous excitement. Even the little cubs have been running around on the road here, I can see from the tracks. There they all are over there at the den. Papa Young, you're in Oklahoma and you want to know how much a hyena can eat in one sitting. Papa Young, look, the statistic that everyone quotes is that a lion, that's a big female chasing a male, is that a lion is able to eat 25% of its body weight in one sitting. I think you'd find a hyena was almost exactly the same. 25% of its body weight, I'm going to say, in one sitting. There is a lot going on here. I think that's the matriarch. Is that the matriarch? They might be taking the youngsters off to go to the kill. That's the scar-backed female. That's June's mother. Here, I think, is Madam, the matriarch, staring Wium in the eyes. Their blood is up. They're all excited. They've eaten, Ashley, you want to know if they eat the organs first? They will definitely eat the soft bits first, as far as they can. Oh, they're leaving.
Yeah, big fat one.
There's a little one in the den side there.
These things have eaten more than 25% of their body weight.
You think they've eaten more than that? They've certainly had a good meal. And they're so excited. Here's the male again. I'm just going to sneak slightly. Oh, let me go back a bit. The male is nervous. I just wanted to get a better picture of him. I can tell he's a male because his penis has got a pinched head on the end of it, which the female pseudo-penises don't. Here's one right next to us here, Wium. Hi. Did you have meat last night? Did you have a good meal? Nice one. Well done. Nice to have made a kill of your own. I'm sure you didn't have too much to do with it, being as little as you are. But you do have very dirty paws, as Louise says. You need to clean that up. It's no good to have offal all over your paws. Jason, you want to know if it's a risk having the kill so close to the den. No, I don't think it is. I think there is safety in numbers, like you say. This is a small clan, though, as I've said to you. And so there is a certain amount of risk, absolutely, because of lions. Lions are the risk that this hyena clan will face. They don't really face a risk from other hyenas, I don't think. It's largely a risk that they face from each other, at least from lions. There goes that one now. We've got 3 youngsters still on the other side. And I think they're probably going back to the kill. So I think it's worth sitting here for a little while, and then we'll go back to the kill site. And what is interesting here to me is that I think the last of the adults is moving off in front of us, and the youngsters are not going back into the den. No, she's coming back, that's why. Oh, there's a big adult in front. You can just see her sticking her head through there on the left-hand side. So she will be nursing or looking after whoever is here, and that's why these youngsters are happy to stay outside of the safety of the den. There's a big one coming past now into the rising sun. Safaridine, you say some of them look so fat they might be pregnant. Could they be pregnant again? I don't think so, Safaridine. I think that they've all just had a massive, massive meal during the course of the night. And I think they've been unattacked by lions, and I think that's strange because there have been lions calling all over the place, and I think the lions must have missed that wildebeest being killed because they definitely... I mean, lions are just as much scavengers as hyenas are in many respects. And I think that had they known what was going on here, they'd definitely have come in. And they might still. But everyone's had a really good meal. A very, very pertinent question from Marianne in Arkansas. You want to know what the method of a lion's kill is, at least a hyena's kill is. How do they kill? It's normally by exhausting their prey, Marianne. They, much like wild dogs, will kind of chase their prey down, not catch them through speed and through stalking, but through coursing and exhausting their prey and eventually wearing it down until they can get a bite in, and then they'll just kind of tear it to pieces, which is a fairly unattractive thing to see. But it is no different from most of the other predators. And it looks from what was going on the road there that they possibly caught that wildebeest unawares. I don't know that they chased it for a great distance. They seem to have caught it somewhere on the road there, and I think it went up and down there for some time before it died. That's what it looks like to me. It may well have been caught in the confusion of a buffalo herd crossing the road, maybe almost purely by chance, because they were so close to the den that the hyenas happened to be around there. Katrina and Teresa, an interesting one from you, of course, which relates directly to the predator hierarchy. One of them is now sliding down the side of the den. You want to know, would wild dogs or leopard ever steal the kill from hyenas? And the answer is no, probably not. Wild dogs are not scavengers. They eat fresh meat only. I'm sure there are incidents where they've scavenged, but they're highly unusual. Leopards will definitely scavenge, but remember, leopards will be terrified to take on a clan of hyenas. They will not take the risk of trying to steal meat unless it's something they can carry straight away and take straight up a tree. So I've seen leopards steal from wild dogs before. They kill something little, a male leopard comes flying out of a bush, grabs the thing before anyone can react, and then shoots up a tree with it. And that's how they manage to steal. But, you know, if it's out in the open, a little bit like that wildebeest is, and there are hyenas feeding on it, it's highly unlikely that a leopard would ever have a go at it. Wonderful. Should we go back and have a look at the kill site and see what's happening there? That's what Wium was hinting at there. While we do that, let's head across to Jeandre and see what she's doing. I think she's got some lion tracks, maybe in the south of the reserve.
Well, I started off my morning thinking about tracking down the lions that were roaring along this road somewhere, or maybe even a little bit further south. But I have been completely distracted by fresh tracks for Karula. And Taxon tells me that yesterday evening after the sunrise safari, they had her hunting on one of the roads on Jeandre, and she missed Impala but managed to catch a korhaan, so a bird, right in front of them. And obviously a bird of a korhaan size for a leopard like Karula is a sort of a half a meal. It's kind of like a starter, particularly since she has little mouths to keep fed as well. So I think that it's likely that after she finished the korhaan, she went off hunting once again. Now, she was walking with serious purpose down the road, and the reason I can tell you that is because her back track extends far in front of her front track. Now, usually when a leopard's walking at a relatively sedate, standard pace, their tracks register. Now, their back foot falls where their front foot leaves the ground. And it's a way of walking silently. Now, I've just lost the tracks and I've gone past them, so I can't show you what I mean, but I am going to go, if I don't find her tracks crossing here, I'm going to go back and I'm going to go have a look at where those last tracks were, because they were on top of hippo tracks from last night. The hippos have been out feeding, they've been moving about the area, and her tracks are on top of those, and there's fresh hippo dung. I mean, it's so fresh that it still looks like it is almost warm in places. So that hippo was not that far behind the hippo, and therefore we are not that far behind her. I will show you the tracks when I can. I just wanted to make sure that we got to this road in time, because I think she's going to fetch her cubs. And that's going to be something that is tremendously exciting once again. It'll be the first time that I've seen them since I've come back from leave. And Jeandre, how many times have you seen Karula's lovely babies? Once. Jeandre has seen them once. That was the first time we saw them properly with Brent. So that's something for both of us to look forward to. They have grown, from what I could see, so much since my last sighting with them. I don't think she would have chosen this path and walked through in this direction. Oh. There we go. Why on earth did she do that? What a strange approach. She's not here, is she? Somewhere on the termite mound. No, I'm sure she's fetching her babies. I'll show you what I'm looking at. Not going to be the clearest of tracks, because this is a main road. Can you get that track there, Jeandre? Can you see that track there? Next to the... There we go. And believe it or not, that is a leopard track. It says slightly obscure. And they cross almost on top of most of the vehicle tracks and into Little Gowrie. So that's why I was rushing here. We've just missed her. But that's okay, because I think she might be back, and hopefully with cubs in tow. Let's head back across to James, who is full of hyena action this morning, and I will continue to look for gorilla.
That is the fattest hyena I've ever seen in all my days. It can barely move, and Wium says it is sort of salivating because it's unable to swallow anymore. I don't think that's quite the case, but just look at her. She's waddling along. And PK, you say this is a Mother's Day buffet. Yes, I suppose it is, isn't it? All right, let's go forward back to the carcass and see what's happening there. A Mother's Day buffet. There's another one here. Just lurking behind a bushel, which is not a great picture, is it, Wium? No. Listen, listen, calling up the den, at least not the den, at the carcass. Let's go there a bit closer. This is amazing. This is just so amazing. Morning, how are you? Good, fine. Hello, Malik in Texas. You want to know about whether we can see slit marks or how this wildebeest was killed? No, not at this stage, Malik. I think it's too far gone. It's been devoured to the extent that it will be any kind of meaningful autopsy will be almost impossible at this stage. What they would probably have done, though, Malik, is disembowel it first. So bite out the sort of soft underbelly, if you like, and then they would have set to the rest of the body. But it wouldn't have been, they wouldn't have got it in a chokehold in the same way something like a lion does. Yeah, and I think a wildebeest cow. And like I say, I mean, there's tremendous confusion all over the road here. So it could well have been, I don't know, it could well have been that maybe the wildebeest got caught up in the buffalo herd. I don't know. Hello, blue butterfrog. Lovely to hear from you again. You said they sometimes leave some of the carcass for vultures. I'm not sure that they'd intentionally leave anything for vultures, no. But there will be vultures around here. This kill is out in the open, and the vultures will take to the air as it starts to warm up around 8 o'clock this morning, and then they will see this carcass. It's out in the open, like I say, and I think you'll find that almost certainly vultures will come through here and land. Quite astonishing. And you can see there, see how the ribs have been eaten? Now, that is classic hyena behavior. They will eat off the ribs quite quickly because they have the teeth to break the bones. And while there's probably quite a lot of meat left in various other parts of the carcass, those ribs will be taken probably almost first. But they did eat this thing pretty quickly, you know. Definitely wasn't here yesterday. It was definitely killed probably relatively, sort of say, midnight last night. And that most of the hindquarters seem to be gone. Forequarters have definitely gone. They may have been carried back to the den by the matriarch. Oh, there are a couple running around everywhere else. So 2 hyenas exploded off into the bush from behind here. Siberia, Zumi, I couldn't agree with you more. You say they're going to just listen to that crunching. Do you say they're going to go back to the den side, flop on the couch and watch some rugby for the rest of the day? I think that's precisely what they're going to do. Just listen to that. Some other hyena calling way to the south. Very, very few animals able to do that sort of thing. Oh, listen, they're calling now. That's from the den side. You say that you're 50% hungry and 50% disgusted. I know exactly what you mean. I think that's a really good way of putting it. And that's the hardy-dar ibis going away, flying over the top. And I must say, it always amazes me how life just carries on. You know, I mean, this wildebeest, of course, met its end in a fairly traumatic way last night, but everything else just gets on with it. The hardy-dars carry on from waterhole to waterhole. Chin spot batters alarming away behind us. The franklins would have got up the same way that they do every day. Dear, just look at me. Sorry. There's a little chin spot batters that's come in to look at these hyenas, and it's going to alarm calls, going prop, 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 prop at them. See it there? Oh, there it is. Brilliant. That's Mrs. Chin Spot Batters. Sorry, gag, I'm afraid I missed your question. Louise, if I might have it again. Gag, you say, will they defend this kill even after they've all eaten? Yes, they will. They'll defend this probably until it's all done, especially as it's so close to where they live. It's not difficult for them to defend it. The hyenas calling from all over the place. There's some from the den, some from way south on the property. You hear that? I think that's a young one calling. Much more high-pitched. You can hear the rest of the morning is not kind of in a tragic funeral state, it's just getting on with it. Now, we have a question from our new favourite Twitter handle, Positive Squirrel. Positive Squirrel, you want to know if they share their food or if they will fight over it. Positive Squirrel, hyenas fight horribly over their food. It's very violent, and unless you're a dominant hyena, you wait your turn or you get yourself into a lot of trouble. The hierarchy is basically established and maintained at a carcass site. It is highly unlikely that a subdominant female or a male would eat first. It will almost certainly be the dominant female and her offspring and sort of close kin, and thereafter the subordinates will eat. The males will come after that. So, Positive Squirrel, it's not a great time for males or subdominant hyenas, but that's generally how it goes. There you can hear that. And Luciferia, you have a nice Twitter handle. I'd love to know the origins of that. Luciferia, you want to know if this is a pup? No, it's not a pup. It is a youngish, looks like a youngish male to me. Remember, we call young hyenas cubs, not pups. So, because they're more closely related to the felids or the cats, so we'd call them cubs and not pups. This is certainly a young one, but I mean, I'd describe it as a sub-adult rather than a cub. Wonderful sighting. So I think they'll probably come to and from this area during the course of the day. It'll depend very much on the presence of other predators, and I don't think anything else is going to come past it except when the vultures start. And like I say, around 8 o'clock the thermals will start to rise off the ground, and then they will descend en masse, quite possibly, and then the hyenas will probably defend it from them. Fascinating. All right, everyone, I think we're going to leave here. We'll carry on towards Buffelshoek Dam, and then we might go down and help Jamie with those leopard tracks. That sounds very exciting indeed. Let's head across to her and get an update, and I'll see you just now.
I'm currently doing some rather grade A lurking on Gowrie Main, idling along in first gear and just letting Rusty carry us gently forward. These tracks of Karula were so fresh that I know that we've just missed her, and I'm really hoping that by idling along here there's a chance that she might come back out with the cubs. Now, that's what we are currently occupied with. It is perhaps not the most exciting way to occupy our time, but it is, because there's that sense of anticipation, and if it pays off, it's going to be an incredibly exciting moment for all of us concerned. So I've essentially am exactly where you left me. I've just been going up and down the road, checking and triple checking the spot where she crossed. I'm going to travel a little bit further afield on this particular trip down the road, just to make sure that she didn't cross any further along. No, these are not fresh. There's leopard tracks and hyena tracks all over the show, so it does make life a little bit more tricky. Her tracks suddenly, very suddenly, went off the road and cut into the middle of the block before she cut back in this direction. And I'm trying to work out what that means. I'm trying to work out if maybe she got distracted by an animal and she went to hunt, or that she suddenly realized that her cubs were in a different direction. And Karula, when she hunts, when she's looking for food, she has one of the most unpredictable moving patterns. She kind of switches and changes and moves backwards and forwards and dodges and weaves. But when she's on a mission, when she's got a purpose, like when we followed her to that ngala kill in the drainage line around the Mulwati, she moves directly. She moves in a straight line and fast, covers ground incredibly quickly. Basically, I feel as though Karula and I have an appointment this morning, and I'm just not quite sure as to what time we're meant to be meeting and where exactly we've arranged to meet. Oh. That's not Karula's tracks. That's a honey badger's tracks. Try and show you what I mean. For a second, the toes had me fooled. But it's not Karula, it is a honey badger. So we're currently sitting, can you see them there, Jeandre? If we go there. Perfect. Thank you very much. I'm going to jump out in a moment, but just to let you know where I am, I'm between Twin Dams Road and Weaver's Nest Road, but the tracks actually crossed further to the west of where I am. Let me just hop out and I'll show you exactly what I mean on that honey badger track, because it's such a nice example of one. Oh, and it's one that you can add to your scrapbook, your tracking scrapbook collection, and it gives me an opportunity to just spend some time on this road waiting for Karula and my appointment, because I'm sure that we have one. Have a look. Which is the best one, Jeandre? Can you get these ones? Were you perfect? Thank you. You have a look at the track here. That's very typical. The most important part of a honey badger track to look for is actually these claw marks separate from the toe. So I can almost fit my finger between the dots of the toes and the claw marks of the track. So it's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 toes and a back pad along here. That's the elongated back pad. And then here are the imprints of the claws. So there's those long, long claws that actually extend away from the edge of the toe. Front track, back track. So actually quite a large track considering the size of the animal. Close to the length of my hand, actually. Sort of to give you a rough sense of scale. And the back track falling on the outside. And this honey badger's walked across in this direction. The only other track that you can confuse this with is a porcupine. And the difference with a porcupine is that you actually get, first of all, you don't see these claw marks as clearly, but you actually get very faint drag marks. Sorry. Oh, it's a ground hornbill. Kook, 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 kook. But yes, you get these gentle drag marks from where the quills have been dragged along behind it. And in fact, it was not just one honey badger, there were actually 2. You very often see them in pairs. But at first glance, it looks like a leopard track. We're going to go all the way to Twin Dams, and then we're going to come back, and we're going to keep checking, because I just have a feeling. It's a gut feeling. It worked yesterday with the cheetah sighting. Hopefully it will pay off for us this morning with a Karula and cub sighting. No sign of the lions, by the way, that I heard calling, so they must have been further south of where we are now. They must have been in Chitwa somewhere. James for Jamie. Apparently James has been trying to get hold of me while I was wandering about off the vehicle. James. James?
Right. Ja, van dat heel.
Okay. Well, we'll wait for...
Pajamas coming.
Oh, there we go. Pajamas. We've sort of discovered the secret behind that. Standing by, James, behind the reason for that nickname.
If you were to guess at a location for where she might be thinking about bringing those cubs back to, where would you say?
I'm not sure. Her tracks looked like she was moving very fast south down Weaver's Nest, but then she cut very suddenly west into the block that's sort of between Weaver's Nest and Shabam Road, south of Treehouse Road.
Okay, copy, thanks.
Now, James and I are planning a dual approach to this situation. He's going to go... He asked me where I think she might be bringing the cubs to. It's all such supposition at this point. I honestly have no idea. That's why I'm so desperate to stay on this road, because I want to be able to find her and to hopefully follow her, depending on the situation and if she takes the cubs along a road, and then let her lead us or take us to the kill along with the cubs. So far, the only sign of life we have is one Cape turtle dove crossing the road. I bet that one knows where Karula is. Now, James Richards on the same page as I am, thinking about tracks and tracking. James has been keeping a scrapbook, as I said, with sort of screenshots, nice screenshots of clear tracks to build up a record of all of the different tracks, just like building up a bird list, kind of. This is a bird that we often ignore, the Cape turtle dove. We've got a pair of them here. Funnily enough, in African culture, unlike most cultures around the sort of Western civilizations, the dove is a symbol of war. It's a symbol of conflict rather than a symbol of peace, because they can fight each other so fiercely for females. But James, you're thinking along my lines. You want cub tracks, and I also want cub tracks, and you wanted to know if we can measure them. I have Wium's trusty calipers ready and waiting, and I'm so interested to see just how big. Apparently, Wium tells me that those tracks of the cubs are already larger than a civet's tracks. So we know roughly what to look for. But I completely agree, yes, and we can measure them. As soon as she decides to bring them back across the boundary. I'm really hoping she does. I'm going to be terribly sad if she doesn't, but just one of those things. Okay, so she hasn't come back yet, unless she's walked behind us, which I wouldn't put past her. And so, we make a decision, and because there's such a strong likelihood of Karula actually coming back and coming back out, especially if she had all of last night to hunt, it's new moon, so there was no ambient light last night. The Impala are distracted by rutting, all of which puts her at a distinct advantage whilst hunting. We're going back. We're going slowly back along the same route. And if this trip doesn't pay off, then we'll just do another bigger loop of the area. A little bit of determination is key sometimes in finding animal sightings. Also gives the lions a chance, actually, to pop out at some point and come and join us. Although I'd prefer it if they didn't do it at the same time Karula's trying to move those cubs. Now, the cubs at the moment are, what are they? What month are we in? May. So they were born in February, the 2nd of February. So they're 3 months, they're just over 3 months old now. So they're almost totally weaned at this point, which means that there's enormous pressure on Karula to keep them well fed. And as we drive once again along Gowrie Main and search for our lovely Queen of Djuma, let's find out what James's plans are for helping with the search.
Hello! We have just seen some lion tracks along here. They look to be fairly fresh, but I think they've gone north into Buffelshoek. We're still on the northern boundary. And yes, thank you, Louise. I know I found lion tracks. I've just told you that. I think they've gone north into, probably into Buffelshoek here, onto the dam wall maybe. There's a dam here. Maybe she had a drink there. But then we did hear some contact calling, what sounded like contact calling through here. So, I mean, given that we are not allowed to go that way, let's just go pop down this road, which is called the Mvubu Road. Let's see if we can't spot anything. Ooh, what's that, BMP? Macy?
I see it.
Nothing.
Buffalo?
Buffalo. And Harvick, you were wondering where the male lions have been. Harvick, we actually don't know where they are at the moment. They're kind of being tracked all over the place. Now, we had a very interesting time 2 nights ago where we had a male lion and a female. Birmingham number 4 he was, Blondie, the very blonde one. And he was mating with one of the Nkuhuma lionesses, Amber Eyes. And then all the way to the south and east on Cheetah Plains, Sam had another male lion. We didn't know who he was until I'm pretty sure one of the viewers, Angie, managed to identify him as a Birmingham boy. He looked a bit old to be a Birmingham boy to me initially, but on closer inspection could well have been. So I think they've kind of been split up and they've been running around trying to defend the territory. There seems to be quite a lot of upheaval at the moment. The Matimba males, who used to own this piece of real estate, are on Simbambili off to the west of us, or they were yesterday, and that is well out of where they've been lurking at Londolozi. So maybe there's some kind of upheaval there, and they are not known for their great courage, the Matimbas, so they probably disappeared from Londolozi, or they came up here to try and expand their territory. But apparently the former Jingalan males, the aging coalition of dominance, did come from the west to the east of the Sabi Sands, and probably what sent everyone scuttling about the place, and probably also what caused the Birmingham boys to split up. The Salati males from the north have been around as well, so maybe the Birminghams all kind of split up looking after the territory, but we don't know. None of them have been found this morning. I don't see any lion tracks on this road here at all. I see many hippopotamus tracks, which is unusual. Anyway, who knows? I think it's very odd that there was a wildebeest killed. I think that you'll find there was a case of wrong place, wrong time for that wildebeest. Buffalo herd coming through, wildebeest got kind of tied up with them. Suddenly there were hyenas everywhere, and I think it probably just found itself in the wrong place. And the hyenas, of course, were never going to try, and they were never going to pass up that opportunity of killing something so close to home. And I think they've been having a whale of a time, having a chow, going back to the den site, having a snooze, coming back, having something to eat, going back to the den site, chilling out with their mates.
They sure look like whales.
They look like whales though, don't they? Yes. Hello, John. You make reference to a book that I contributed to once called Whatever You Do, Don't Run. And you say if you were to come across the hyenas feeding on their wildebeest on foot, should you run away, or should you just walk away, or should you stand still? John, I think what you'd find is that those hyenas, if you came across them on foot, would scrapper, they'd run away, they'd lurk in the bushes quite close by, sort of just outside of their flight distance. If you then try to steal their meal, you might induce some kind of an approach from them where they might come forward and kind of growl a bit and maybe make a few whooping sounds, but if you were sort of confident enough, I think they'd run away. But I don't think, I mean, that would be during the day. At night, I think it would be a totally different situation. And I also think that once their blood is up, when they're in that state, they've just had a conflict, they've just killed something, while hyenas almost universally will run away from people on foot, I would be reticent to approach them too closely when they're just killed, or especially after they just had a fight with another clan, which I don't think they have. Just listening to Andrew giving an update on the radio. There's some kudu alarm calling around Bivelshoek Dam. So we haven't found any lion tracks here. So I think let's go across there. Maybe we'll be lucky. We're not too far from there. Siberia Zumi, a nice question from you about the Matimba males and whether they would realize that the Birminghams are now one short of their number of 5, they're now down to 4, and that they'd split up, and would that then induce them to sort of come into the area and maybe sort of retake their old hunting grounds? The answer is I don't think so. Now, without being too cynical, those Matimba males showed about as much courage as a bushveld gerbil faced with a bulldozer. When the Birmingham boys came into this area, there was actually no physical confrontation at all. The Birminghams roared, the Matimbas got up and ran away. So I don't think, I mean, they certainly would have no idea that one of the Birminghams has died. They just noticed that his voice wasn't calling anymore. Whether that would result in some kind of conscious calculation that the coalition that had tossed them off their kingdom was one short, I don't think so. But I still think that the 4 of them would be a formidable, far too formidable for the Matimbas to take on. So I don't think it's going to result in any sort of retaking of the old kingdom, if you like. Turned into a very beautiful morning. There were some very strange black or dark clouds moving across the sky very quickly when I sent you over to Jamie for the first time. And I wonder if there is the front moving in it. I don't think it was as cold as 15 degrees this morning. And that normally tells me that there's a front on its way in. And you can see quite a lot of cloud just up in the sky there. Rachel, you say it looks like it's starting to warm up and you're wondering about the thermals and when they're going to start coming into the air. Rachel, they'll only go into the air probably at around 8 o'clock. So 8 o'clock you'll find that the Earth would have heated sufficiently for the thermals to begin. Nowhere near now. So, I mean, we're a good, well, maybe even 8:30. We're probably a good hour away from there being any thermals that a vulture could use. And that's why that carcass there will remain completely untouched by scavenging birds for at least another probably 2 hours. And as we know, vultures in this particular area have reduced over the last 10 years, so I think it's, maybe even be longer. Hello, Angie in Wisconsin. There is an enormous fascination amongst our viewers for unusually coloured animals. King cheetahs, black leopards, white lions, albino elephants. And Angie, you say you saw today a leucistic robin. So leucistic, everybody, means not albino, but certainly a much paler form of animal. And you want to know if we ever see leucistic birds here? We do sometimes, not very often. I've seen leucistic francolin in this area, and obviously we get feral pigeons, not in the reserve, but we get feral pigeons all over the place in our cities. And a feral pigeon is a great way to go and find out about these different colour morphs that birds get, and indeed most mammals get various forms of leucism and melanism and eruphism, I guess you'd call it, the red form. And if you go and look at feral pigeons, you can definitely see white ones, you can see black ones, you can see reddish ones, and you can see all colour variations in between. And that's the same thing, but because it doesn't tend to affect feral pigeons in the wild, so those genes kind of spread throughout the population. Leucistic birds out here, I think, have a really tough time, much more difficult for them to hide away from predators, and so I don't think that the gene for leucism is a particularly strong one, in that it won't last within a population, because you basically, if you're a leucistic robin in this area, for example, you're most likely to be eaten by a goshawk before you're able to breed, because you'll just become a little cotton wool ball sitting in a tree. Very nice, Angie, thank you. Let's go across to Jamie and get an update on patient waiting.
For now, I have abandoned my post on Gowrie Main. We'll come back a little bit later and we'll see whether or not she has crossed. There's always the chance that we could sit there for 3 hours this morning and she might be resting up with the cubs and decide not to cross at all for the duration of the sunrise safari. So thinking about that has sort of led me to decide that it was time to move on, especially because Andrew has just radioed James and myself to let us know that there are alarm calls around Central Road. So I think both James and I are going to double check there. I'm on my way now, and let's see if we can't figure out. Oh, I think James is actually a little bit closer. It was just a judgment call as to whether or not we could spend that much time actually sitting on one road. Probably not. I think that as viewers it would be terribly boring for you to drive up and down the same road. So we'll come back, and if she has decided to cross, then we'll find her tracks, and if she hasn't, then we made a good decision. I'm still keeping my fingers crossed though, and I'm going to spend the last half an hour or so of drive double checking. It's one of those exciting warnings where you know that things are happening, starting of course with that incredible hyena sighting with the wildebeest, and one has to wonder whether or not they killed that themselves. I think they probably did. But then I have a suspicion that there's lions somewhere on this property. I just wanted to stop and show you something in terms of height. We spoke this morning about fresh hippo signs and the fact that they've been moving through this area last night at the same time as Karula. And just have a look at this dung that's been spread across the road. Now, for some reason, it's a fairly widely known fact that hippo, only actually dominant bulls when they're out of the water, but a hippo will sweep its tail from side to side to scatter its dung. What I wanted to show you was actually just how high that manages to go. So just if you look along this poor silver cluster leaf and buffalo thorn entangled together, you can see that the hippo dung has made it all the way up there. And just to give you a sense of scale, I'm actually going to hop out and show you just how high that is. And that in turn gives you an idea of just how large a hippo really is. We so often see them in water, and even when we see them from the vehicle, it doesn't give you that true perspective. And it's only when you encounter them on foot by mistake outside of the water that you realize just how large they are. So this bull walked down the road at some point last night and scattered his dung. And to give you a sense of scale, it's here. This is where the last piece of dung is that I can see. That's how high a hippo is able to. And in fact, there's some more reaching all the way back here. That's taller than me for height. And he was standing in the road. Isn't that incredible? That's some seriously rapid swiping of the tail. Pure grass, obviously, as you know, hippos are really only grazers. The only time they'll eat leaves is by mistake whilst feeding along or grazing along the grass. But that height is absolutely phenomenal. Not fresh, not as fresh as the hippo dung that helped us age the tracks for Karula this morning. Started to dry off already.
Okay, I'm coming. Yeah, over one also here, some boat heading west. Maybe it's one of us or two. Yeah, must be the one.
Sorry guys, let me just listen to this.
Taxon, how many ngala?
They're still coming. It looks like the same one that we put, yeah, the same price from last night.
Can I pull them from the boundary?
It is.
Say again, Taxon.
Sorry guys, Tax has just found some lions.
Towards the mud, but they're coming from the eastern side.
I just want to find out which dam he's seen them at.
Yeah, I'll come maybe have a bullet from the boundary.
Let's just wait for that conversation to finish and then I'll ask for some clarification.
Checks where there's ngala.
Oh, there we go.
It looks like a Sydney dam.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, since we do have a camera with incredible zoom, they are making their way towards Sydney's dam, so I think we're going to head across there. We'll leave James to follow up on the alarm calls, just simply because our camera's got a slightly better zoom than the one on Wendy at the moment. Tax for Jamie.
Go, Jamie.
Tax, I'd like to make my way there as well, and we'll stand by on the boundary.
Yeah, you guys can watch them from the boundary, no problem.
Copy that, thanks. I'm still on Twin Dams. Yay! We at least have some lions, so the lions can keep us distracted until it comes time to go back and head back to search for Karula. So we'll leave James to follow up on those alarm calls, and we'll head across to Sydney's dam. We knew by the roaring this morning that they were in the area. We've had some interesting news over the last 2 days about the fact that the Matimba males have returned once again to the area up towards Simbambili, a property that's to the northwest of us. Positive Squirrel was wondering a little bit about how coalitions are formed and whether or not they are always related males or if they will accept other members. There's a really interesting dynamic, and I'm actually going to answer this in comparison to the Cheetah brothers that we've been seeing and that we saw yesterday. With Cheetah, invariably, the coalition is two brothers, and sometimes maybe, just maybe, that will extend to cousins. And they can be brothers from a separate litter, but they will be absolutely related. And the reason behind that, we watched those cheetah brothers yesterday. One of those males was more active in terms of marking the trees around him than the others. And that's because with the cheetah coalition, there is a dominant member, and he will be the one almost exclusively that actually has a chance to mate with the females. So the fact that the rest of the coalition is invested in their success means that they won't get to pass on their genes, but because they're so selective about who is in the coalition, it means that at least as siblings, at least 50% of their genes are being passed along through their brother. Lions, on the other hand, are something completely separate. So whilst, yes, most coalitions are formed from related males, because when you're born into a family that has several members in it, several male lions in the same litter or in cousin litters, it makes sense to move off on your own. That time when a male lion leaves the pride is quite a scary one. So it makes sense to stay together, which is how the Birmingham Boy and the Matimba male lion coalitions were formed. But let's say, for example, Junior, the young male from the Nkahuma pride and the son, probable son, of the Matimba male lions. He's moved out on his own. He didn't have any litter mates to form a coalition with. If he comes across an unrelated young male of a similar age, there is a very, very good chance that they will actually join together. And it's quite common for male lions to form unrelated coalitions. And the reason why they are less selective than a cheetah coalition is just the fact that within a male lion coalition, they all have a chance to mate at some point. There are lots of females, unlike with cheetah, where access to females is relatively limited. With lions, there's always a pride. The pride members will synchronize their estrus cycle to an extent. So there's a very good chance that they will have a chance and an opportunity to pass along their own genes. So for their survival, it makes total sense, rather than being picky about who to form a coalition with, it makes total sense for them to actually bond together and increase their success rate and their chances of holding a territory. And I'm not stopping for now, just because I want to get to Sydney's dam as quickly as possible. We're not too far away. It's interesting, just while we're driving along around Philemon's Dip, Karuna covered enormous areas last night, but it sounded as though Taxon and Aubrey also found tracks for Sekani, and her feet are noticeably bigger than Karuna's tracks. So it's Sekani, that young female, Kwetile's daughter, that's been seen in this area a couple of times now. She appears to be thinking about moving into at least the top northwest corner of Djuma. I wonder whether or not they are, or just how aware Karuna really is of her presence in essentially her territory. And of course, just a quick answer to Cheryl's question, I've been talking to Tax on the Game Drive channel, and I've mentioned that I've seen him, and I didn't actually make it clear who I was talking about. Cheryl, Tax is one of the incredibly experienced guides who operates out of the two lodges on Djuma. So there's Vuyatela and there's Galago. Generally, Taxon will work out of Vuyatela Lodge, so he'll drive guests from Vuyatela. And Aubrey is the other guide. He will drive guests out of Galago. So that is who Taxon and Aubrey are. They're very, very experienced guides, and they give their guests an incredible time whilst visiting the game reserve. They also have a slightly further or slightly more extended traverse area, so they help to keep us updated on the movements of the different animals outside of where we could usually go. I'm going to race across to Sydney's dam to join the said Taxon at his lion sighting. While I do, let's find out how James's alarm call following is going.
Now we've come past Buffelshoek Dam and we found some male lion tracks. And we don't know how fresh they are. There they are. Male and female, it's this mating pair. I think they've gone out onto Cheetah Cut Line there. They've gone back up this road here, sadly. Let's just go and see if they haven't crossed. I think they're from early last night, which means I don't think that they are very fresh. But they might be just here. Tracks are not here anymore. Yes, they are. No, they're not. Let me just go onto the top here. Let's go up onto the cut line here and see if they haven't popped out. Wium's eagerly eyes are watching. There've been a lot of zebra running up and down the road, and so they could easily have obliterated the lion track. Here they are, here are the lions. Walking straight up. Oh, and I just wanted to show you quickly. Let me just see if there's one up here. I wanted to show you the size of the male lion foot. I can't see one here. Can you? Yeah?
Only back there.
Back there. Just not so nice light. Yeah. No, these are last night. See, there's a decent one there.
The one next to the stick.
Okay. Can you see this one? Okay, everyone, this is the size of a lion's paw. That's a male. And you can see my hand fits perfectly into his track. He's not a particularly big one, so you'll find that the really big ones have got even bigger tracks than that. They've gone off into Torchwood here, I think. These are definitely from relatively early last night. There is zebra on top of them from this morning. But they may have turned south. We'll go back down towards the south, see what we can come up with. Might be very lucky, but I think that they're probably gone into Torchwood. I'm just going to call that in. Stations tracks of one male, one female lion mobile east from Hippo Pools into Torchwood. Sheila, you're talking about an interesting one. You say you agree with me with my casting aspersions on the Matimbas, saying that they lacked courage and they just disappeared. I mean, I think I probably would have done the same thing had I been them. But you say it looks like their lineage will be snuffed out, given that they now have been chased out of Londolozi. They fathered cubs, did they not? Are the very young Nkahumas? That one young Nkahuma female, is she not an offspring of the Matimbas? And Junior is also, as far as I know. So their genetic legacy still exists. in probably 2 lionesses at least, or 2 lions at least. The sticks, yes, they were obliterated from that lineage as the Birminghams came in. But also, as far as I know, the Matimas have had cubs with the Tsalala pride. And it's possible that they will go back into that area when the Majingis go back west. The Majingalan are getting old now. They're not as young as they once were. And so I think they'll be covering slightly less ground than they used to. And so those little cubs might well survive. Some Impala. We're going to go down to the south of the reserve. We're going to head west then. And I know Jamie was around Gari Main hoping that Karula might pop across. I think 1 or 2 vehicles driving the same road at intervals is a good idea. So we'll do that. And just to keep you updated on what she's doing, I'll tell you now. Interesting, Marco. A nice question from you. Just before I tell you what that, give you the answer, Jamie is heading towards Sydney's Dam where there were some lions. They seem to be moving, but I think they're moving possibly towards that wildebeest carcass. There's still quite a lot of meat left, so there may well be some action around there at some stage. So I think she'll probably hang around. There's no visual as far as I can tell. You can't see the lions at the moment from the boundary, but they're heading towards, close to where those hyenas were. Marco, great question from you that we could probably discuss for some time. And I'll give you the short version of the answer. You say, would a coalition member of, or a male lion coalition member ever kill cubs sired by another coalition member, given that his genes are not being passed on? So, for example, in the Nkuhuma pride, let's say Blondie the lion manages to mate with Amber Eyes, she produces cubs. Is it possible that Mo, the Birmingham boy, will then kill those cubs because they're not part of his genetic legacy? No, the answer is generally not. I'm sure it's happened every so often, but the answer is almost never. And the reason for that is that within a coalition, the coalition is normally quite closely related. And because the coalition is quite closely related, they share genetic legacy, they share genetic material. They are the same genes. And so when one coalition member leaves a genetic legacy, makes cubs, to a greater or lesser degree, the genetic legacy of the entire coalition is passed on to the next generation. Now, it is the same way that I'm sure many of you who have experienced what I experienced when my brother and sister-in-law produced 2 little boys. The attachment that I had to them was immediately stronger than it was to any other child I'd ever met before. And I've got no doubt in my mind that although, yes, my brother and I are very close, and so that would immediately result in my being protective over his children, I've got no doubt that somewhere in the recesses of my biology there is a kinship with them that makes me protective over them, because they do share some of my genes. And although my brother and I, so they share basically 50% of my brother's genes, and therefore they share roughly 25% of my genes. And that makes us closer to our nieces and nephews. And it's the same thing with those lions. Those lions are going to feel a kinship with their nieces and nephews, which they certainly wouldn't if they were strangers' cubs. So I think, Marco, that answers why it is that coalition members who don't necessarily sire cubs, let's just go down this road here, coalition members who don't necessarily sire cubs are perfectly tolerant of other coalition members' cubs. But we do know that coalitions are not always related to each other. Sometimes an old male will hook up with a young male and they won't be related. And I'm not really sure what happens genetically in that sort of situation. Very nice topic, that. And of course, none of this is conscious. None of it is a conscious decision by the lions. None of it is a decision. It's all It's all just within the genetics. It's all instinctual. So the radio is doing all sorts of interesting things in my ear, so I'm just listening carefully so that I can follow what's going on around where those hyenas and lions are. I'm sure Jamie will get there in time for anything exciting to happen. Especially as she's got the long lens this morning. It's not warming up like I thought it was going to. So I said around 8 o'clock, what are we sitting at now? We're almost at 8, that it would be sort of hot enough for the thermals to start rising. And no, there's no thermals coming up at the moment. It's still quite chilly. But out in the northern reaches of Jeandre, Jamie Patterson is exploring with her long lens. Let's see what she can see with it.
Exploring the northern reaches somewhat unsuccessfully. Unfortunately, our lions have walked further to the east into Buffelshoek, a property on our northern side of our Traverse area, a place where we cannot go and join them. However, we are not losing hope just yet, for it sounds as though every now and again they lift up their heads and sniff in the direction of where that carcass was that James was sitting with earlier this morning, the hyena's carcass. We found the drag mark from where the hyenas dragged it along. Excuse me. Thank you. And the winter dust playing havoc with the sinuses. My apologies, I did try to cover the mic ever so slightly so that you didn't get the full force of the sneeze. Of course, there's a chance that these lions have been moving all day, all night, and they're now looking for a place to rest up. But they're not above going to steal that carcass from the hyenas either. And I'm going to tell you a little something about the dynamics of this pride in a moment. But before I do, Big Dave, good morning and welcome to the Sunrise Safari. You were wondering about how leopards and lions navigate on new moon nights when they don't have the light of the moon to guide them. And the answer is their nocturnal vision, their nighttime vision is so incredibly well advanced. And that tapetum lucidum, the reflective layer that the nocturnal, all animals have except for the primates, but it's particularly advanced in the nocturnal predators and the nocturnal animals. That tapetum lucidum is perfectly designed to take advantage of absolutely any ambient light.
Okay, because it's my main control for Macy, but no control for.
Sorry, just listening to the update from Aubrey. He says that they are now lying down in a block where we just can't see them. So Big Dave, they can take advantage of the tiniest sliver of ambient light, and even on the darkest night, they can see almost as though it were full moon. And in fact, it's their time to shine, so to speak, because they can take full advantage of the fact that the diurnal animals cannot see all that well. Now, the interesting aspect of this pride, and I'm going to go up to Sydney's Dam just to have a look and see. They're to the east of us, so they've disappeared into the block away from us, unfortunately. But let's just see what's happening at Sydney's Dam and if there's any sign of any animals or if they've all been chased away by the presence of the lions. All looks to be completely quiet. Oh, I can hear hyenas. There's a hyena very close to us. Now, what I was going to tell you was that Taxon, who has been with the pride, has absolutely no idea which lions they are. 3 young males, and that initially made me think that it was the Salalas, and 6 adult females. So that maybe not the Salalas after all of that. Now, a little bit confusing, some interesting aspects there. I have absolutely no idea which pride that might be. They seem to be relatively relaxed wherever they, or whoever they happen to be. So this area is familiar to them. And what has caused them to come across in this direction might be changes within the male dynamics. But if any of you have any idea which particular pride might have 3 young males and 6 adult females from this area, or close to this area, a pride in Manuletti maybe that you're aware of, or one of the other ones, I don't think a lion pride from Londolozi or Mala, for example, would have walked all the way up north, but it's not impossible. It just makes sense because we have the boundary of Manuletti so close that it's a lion pride from there. But I'm really hoping that they might decide to come and join us at some point on this boundary road so that we can, first of all, see some new lions, which is incredibly exciting, but also just to get an idea of exactly who they are. And maybe even see some interactions with hyenas, which is an incredible sight to see. Let's just have a look at this little bird quickly, since it is bobbing about so nicely, quite close to us. It looks like a 3-banded plover. Yep, there we go. One of the smallest species of plover, the 3-banded, about half the size of the crowned lapwing, or the blacksmith lapwing, but still part of this similar family. A bright reddish eye, and a very distinctive white band that runs along the crown. Having a good feather preen. It always amazes me that head bob that they do, that very rapid up-down movement. I'm not 100% sure exactly why it is that a lot of the bird species do that. I mean, it's not like he's walking, he or she. Not walking. It's not a physiological, it's not an anatomy issue. Quick scratch. Now, Taxon, like myself, also wondering why it is the hyenas are contact calling to each other. I think what I'm going to go and do is investigate the main access road. See if there's any sign of them there. And wait for the lions to decide to come and steal that carcass, hopefully. Or at least come and investigate the carcass so that we have a chance to see them. Alright, let's do a quick loop and see what the hyenas are up to. There's a wildebeest. One very upset-looking wildebeest. But he's also disappeared in the direction of the lions. Might be part of the herd that the hyenas managed to select some poor hapless member from. No, it's just out of view. Alright, let's go and investigate. I want to go and see what those hyenas are calling about while we wait for the mysteries of the pride dynamics to be unraveled. Now, my immediate initial thought was that it was the Salalas, but obviously with the 6 adult females, unless some of the breakaways have joined together with the Salala pride itself, that doesn't seem to be terribly likely. So it's a complete mystery. So Safari Hayes, you were suggesting that it's a possibility, particularly if there are 3 young males, as Tax suggested. but he didn't mention anything about a lioness without a tail. Now, I doubt that the tailless lioness would have left those 3 young males to their own devices. The Solana Pride comes with a very checkered, very interesting history, of which she plays quite a crucial part, and her mother before her, also a tailless lioness. I wonder if there wasn't some kind of genetic weakness there, actually, that led both of them to be without tails. Just wanted to check up this road a little bit. This sounded like where the hyenas were calling from. No. This is a dead end, so let's go round to access and just do a loop. And Angie, you were wondering if it could be the Torchwood Pride. Yes, absolutely it could. The Torchwood Pride we actually hadn't heard about. They hadn't been seen for quite a considerable period of time, to the best of our knowledge. The Talamati Pride, which doesn't have 3 young males in it, so it can't be them. The Talamati Pride were quite prominent for a long time around Buffelshoek, but the Torchwood Pride was suspected to have moved somewhere around Kruger or into Manuleti. So yes, I guess I'm sure it could be. I don't know enough about their dynamics or their numbers to fully confirm. We'll have to keep investigating, and perhaps Taxon's guests will be kind enough to share some of their photographs of those lions, which might help us as well. And Angie, I know that you know the lions of this area exceptionally well, so we can all have a look and we can all give an opinion as to who it... Oh, I'm actually not going to, because I don't know the lions outside of our lions well enough to guess. Right, it seems as though both James and myself are doing some grade A lurking this morning. We're still lurking. James has now replaced me at the spot on Gowrie Main, so let's find out if anybody has put in an appearance for us.
While I would normally completely object to being called a grade A lurker, I think that's precisely what is going on here. I have been scarring the scarring for tracks in the same way that Jamie was earlier on. We're about to be passed by a vehicle not looking for tracks. Come on then. It's probably time I hear Maramani. That chap I met the other day at Cheetah Plains, he works at Cheetah Plains. Excuse me one sec. And I thought he looked familiar. I said, what's your surname? And he said, well, my surname is Maramani. And I said, your brother's John, isn't it? Isn't he? And he said, yes, indeed. And a while ago, I used to work with a chap called John Maramani. And John Maramani was a fantastic tracker. And he just had a very characteristic face and sense of humour. And this chap's exactly the same. So we'll just do the grade A lurking that Jamie has spoken of. I don't see any further tracks. What? Dude, this cameraman of ours is too fantastic. Doubles as a tracker. What have we got? Mobile where?
Mobile backwards.
Backwards?
To the west.
To the west. Okay, let's have a look.
I say west, I mean east.
You mean east? So where the sun comes from as opposed to where it's going. Right, let's have a look, everybody. Let's have a look. See. I have to confess, everyone, that Wium and I have got a slight state of a heartburn as a result of some Dom Pedros we made last night, which were made with, I think, probably the Long Life cream. We're both sort of walking around like this, which you don't want to be doing if you see a female leopard. It's come from there. Now, I suspect quite strongly that these are the tracks that Jamie had crossing back into the south. Here they are. heard my stomach growl and I thought it was Karula. There is her track, crossing south. So she's going straight in here. And I'm pretty sure these are the ones that Jamie saw coming down onto the road. So we'll go back along there and just see if she doesn't pop out. She may or may not have a kill in Vuyatela, we'll see. But we did find her tracks coming out again of Vuyatela that side and going back in there. So she might just be doing hunting forays into here, not catching anything, and then going back to the cubs. But I don't know. You might be lucky with our grade A lurking. Thank you, Jamie, for that. Okay. There we go. I still think there's going to be action at that hyena carcass. Well, the wildebeest carcass that belongs to the hyenas. All right, while we look along here, Jamie's got some small mongoose to show you.
Sorry, I'm laughing because we did have some small mongoose, and then for some unknown reason, they all got a fright and they've all disappeared into their burrows. Luckily, their natural curiosity, plus combined with the fact that at some point they're going to have to go out and start foraging, means that their heads will start popping up very shortly. There we go, we've got one. And it's amazing what late risers a dwarf mongoose family can be in winter. They wait for the sun to come well up so that they can sun themselves and warm up before they head out. So, of course, one aspect of having such a tiny body is that they have an exceptionally large surface area to volume ratio, which means they lose heat very rapidly. And their bodies have to work quite hard at maintaining their body temperature. Here we go. There's several starting to pop out again. There's a couple of, not babies, but what would I call them? Probably sub-adults amongst this little troop of mongoose, business of mongoose. There we go. There's two of them on the right. Hello, little ones. They just have slightly rounder heads than a fully grown adult. But they're old enough to be leaving the burrow with the rest of the group and heading out foraging. And I really, really enjoy spending time with dwarf mongoose. They're actually quite intelligent animals. And they've got very complex social dynamics that play out. And while they spend some time heating up, it actually gives us an opportunity to watch and to try and work out exactly who is who in this particular group. And it's always nice. The dwarf mongoose families that settle around a main road, like the road that we're on at the moment, where the Vuyatela main access, they're exposed to the regular passage of vehicles, which means that they are generally incredibly relaxed. And this even gives us an opportunity to look at the bizarre squarish shape to their pupils whenever they look towards us. Just making little dwarf mongoose contact calls, and there's an instant response. Now, there's very little sexual dimorphism between a male and a female dwarf mongoose. But if I had to guess, I would say that the one in the front is probably a male. It just looks a little bit bigger and a little bit stockier, but it's a pure guess. It would be impossible to tell without having a closer inspection. And I do apologize for the incredibly blocked nose. The autumn hay fever has set in. Now, it's important for them to come out and sun themselves, not just because they want to be warm, but actually because if they are too cold when they head out foraging, it will actually make them sluggish and their reactions slow. And when you are the smallest predator in the Sabi Sands, it doesn't pay to not be on your guard. Now, we do have a question about what would be the main predator of a dwarf mongoose. Most likely, if we had to look at percentages, probably most of them would be caught by birds of prey. So, Brian, you were wondering about that. Young leopard cubs, of course, the first thing that springs to mind was that sighting that we had of the young male cub who had managed to catch a dwarf mongoose but didn't quite know exactly what to do with it. That's unusual. It would generally fall victim to large species of snakes, most likely the fast-moving ones, because they do have, whilst not a complete immunity, they do have a bit more resistance to snake venom than a human being might do. But a large puff adder could potentially grab and catch a dwarf mongoose, but mambas and cobras in particular. Most of you will be thinking, but mongoose have a reputation. Oh, look at this. We've got the whole family coming out to enjoy the sun. Mongoose do have a reputation for being snake killers, and particularly dwarf mongoose will band together to scare away a venomous snake, a large venomous snake. We saw that happen a couple of months ago in one of the most incredible dwarf mongoose sightings I have ever had whilst live, where what looked like a huge cobra slithered past on camera and was then accompanied, or after that the dwarf mongoose then set about moving all of their pups away from the one burrow and into a different one, carrying 5 of them across. So birds of prey, large species of snakes, but again they have to be careful because a mongoose could turn the tables. Those would be the main source of predation. They're not really on the menu for a fully grown leopard, lion or cheetah. They can't be bothered, and they're generally too fast and too canny for the smaller cats to catch. A caracal would have a good chance. But as they forage, they have a number of bolt holes that they will search for and dive into. They are terribly, terribly sweet. That is a brilliant question that's come through from Rachel. Rachel was saying, well, we're sitting with a business of mongoose, which is a brilliant collective noun. Rachel would like to know what my favorite collective noun for a group of animals is. There are so many brilliant ones. One of my favorite, I think, is the journey of giraffe. A journey of giraffe has just such a poetic feel to it. It inspires visions of giraffe silhouettes in the African sunset walking across a huge open clearing. That's what the collective noun journey of giraffe brings to my mind. A murder of crows is also quite funny. Louise in Final Control has said that her favorite is a constitution of owls. There's another one. I was actually going to say with the giraffe, I had a group of school kids once that I was taking out on a safari, and they refused to accept that a journey of giraffe was the correct collective noun, and they decided that it should be a jumble of giraffe, which completely wipes away my very dignified, sort of picturesque image of giraffe and sunsets, and conjures to mind a pile of giraffe that have fallen over and are all tangled together. But kids do come up with the best way of phrasing things. A dazzle of zebras, also wonderful. What I would love to actually hear from all of you as to what your favorite collective nouns are. A pride of ostriches works quite well. I enjoyed that. Or discovering that. And what did we say about the vultures? I cannot believe it's gone out of my head. Was it not a wake? A wake of vultures all sitting on the trees. Oh, it was a kettle when they're flying. and a venue when they're sitting, although I'm sure that somebody said something about awake. So there are some spectacular collective nouns out there. The dazzle of zebra, the business of mongoose. They always do seem to be very busy. Apparently it's a wake of shrews. That doesn't make any sense at all. That definitely doesn't fit. That's not my favorite collective noun at all. Do you have a favorite collective noun, Jeandre?
A bewilderment of brains.
Jeandre has said a bewilderment of Brents. That's an interesting one. That's a new one. Rachel says she loves the dazzle of zebra. The dazzle of zebra sort of brings to mind, when I think of a dazzle of zebra, I see them all sort of sequined, covered in sequins and with feather boas on stage. That's what I picture when I... That's what I picture when I hear the term dazzle of zebra. And in the meantime, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 mongoose as part of this business, all wondering what on earth these strange two-legged beings are muttering on about. Still being very lazy, considering it is 8:15. We have one favorite from Rebecca, who is also in final control. She enjoys the flamboyant of flamingos. And they most definitely are flamboyant, with all of that shrimp eating turning them pink. One thing I haven't seen a lot of while we've been watching these mongoose is actually aloe grooming. You get to sort of gauge the dynamics as they groom each other. At the moment, it just seems to consist of, oh, there we go, some anal pasting on a blade of grass, it looked like. Slowly looking like they might want to get a bit more active, but they haven't quite managed to muster the energy to head out and forage. I said that they are the smallest predator on this reserve. They are... what would be the word? They are fierce hunters of the insect life out here, but also incredibly adaptable, very powerful senses of smell for sniffing out scorpions hidden in burrows and dung beetle larvae that have been buried deep beneath the ground. And whilst there's not much aloe grooming, sitting quietly, I can actually hear the little tiny, tiny soft contact squeaks. Oh, look at that little one. Big stretch out. That's one of the sub-adults. You can see the size difference if it moves closer to an adult. You can actually sort of see what I meant about the slightly more rounded face. Oh, there's a latecomer that just emerged there. Up you get, come on. The morning is starting. Our Luciferia, who is one of our newer viewers, was wondering whether or not the mongoose are part of the feline family. And they're not. They're actually a completely separate family known as the Herpestidae. Herpestidae family. Now, the Mastilidae, the Viveridae, and the Herpestidae family, if we want to go into the official terminology, in other words, honey badgers, civets, genets, and mongoose are all quite closely related as family groups, unified by what seems to be a common evolutionary ancestor, but all have the common trait of having, or particularly distressing trait in some cases, of having a very highly functional anal gland that they use to deposit anal pastes on grasses and around their territories. Or in the case of something like a polecat, as a potential weapon to scare other animals. And I've seen it happen with civets as well. The other day we saw Tsakani flush a civet from its hiding place, and there was a very strong smell as we drove around that bush, and that probably came from a spray from the civet's anal gland, almost like something similar to a skunk. But mongoose are not related to cats. They're an entirely separate family. And out here you could see one of 4 different species. The dwarf mongoose, the smallest of them, as the name suggests, is the most common. But you could also see a look at that wonderful way that foot is gripping onto the part of the termite mound. Oh, such wonderfully agile little creatures. So you could see slender, white-tailed and water mongoose here as well, all part of the same family. This large family looks like it wants to go out, but isn't quite ready to move away from the safety of the burrow with us watching. So we're going to move off, give them a chance to head out. Oh, there we go. A little bit of gentle grooming. I hear that James has been out on foot tracking, and I'm sure he would like to fill you in on what he's been up to. So let's jump on the back of his vehicle.
Look what I found, everybody. Isn't it amazing, Wium?
Is there something in the tree, or is it just a dead tree?
No, it's just a dead tree. It's picturesque, you see.
I like it.
That's all I managed to find, I'm afraid. We found a few tracks, but the same ones that Jamie had, the ones I left you with, and we haven't found anything further. Anyway, we've come along around Philemon's cut line, and now we're going to go towards Philemon's dip. And James Richards, you say that in order to remedy Wium's heartburn problem, I mean, I was being quite polite about the heartburn. What I meant was actually that, there's a sort of, there's a build-up, a gaseous build-up within the bowels. And you were suggesting some kind of natural remedy for this, and there is actually one, but you've got to be very careful, and you've got to know exactly how to use it. And it's called tambuti, and it's a toxic plant, so you can't even cook on the wood. If you cook on the wood, it's very toxic. You can taint the meat, and the stories of families being found sort of dead somewhere in the bush, they've cooked the meat on the wrong wood, and it's killed them. So it's very toxic, so you've got to know exactly how much to use. I'll try and find you one. The beautiful smelling wood, but you can it's got a toxic sap in it. You can take that sap, you can take a few leaves, like probably 3 or 4, just small leaves like that, and put them in some water, boil them up, and you can drink that. And if you've got some troubled bowels, then that will apparently sort you out. And I think I've told you the story before about the fact that I used to have a tracker called Elvis, and Elvis used to treat himself once or twice bi-monthly, just to, sort of cleanse himself. So I think my wind audio is quite hectic. I'm not sure what I can do about that. I'll just hold my microphone. There we go. That should be a bit better. Is that better, Wium? Yeah. And Elvis used to treat himself with a decoction of tambuti, like I say, on a bi-monthly basis. And he would arrive for game drive in the middle of summer with his woolly hat on and sort of shivering. And I'd say, Elvis, what on earth's the matter? Assuming that he had malaria. And he would say, no, just time of the tambuti. And I'd go, oh, yes, okay. And then he would sort of find himself, he'd find tracks to go tracking. So he needed to excuse himself every so often from the vehicle if he'd overdosed. Anyway, we'll attempt not to do that, but I have seen the tree. I'll just quickly show you the tree, mainly because it's quite pretty. It's on top of the termite mound there, Wium, just behind. Let me move back a little, and then I'll just go and fetch a piece. It's that green one there. think that's one. I'm 90% sure it's one. Now, what you can see from this tree, the Tambuti tree, is the fact that it's got these long, sort of spiked branches or twigs. And if you were making a kebab, or what we call in South Africa, sasati, those long twigs make ideal kind of sasati sticks. And this family I was talking about that was eventually found sort of all expired in the middle of the bush one day had used these long sticks to make sasatis and had cooked them over an open fire, probably on this wood. And that had eventually killed them. Anyway, it doesn't smell, this particular wood doesn't smell any different from sort of wet wood, but the mature wood, the heartwood does. What you've got to watch out for, though, is this. It's that sap. So to touch it is certainly not toxic, but that white sap there that you can you see it there on the end of the leaf? White sap on the end of the leaf there is toxic. So you've got to watch out for that. And that is what will relieve your troubled bowels if you are to make a decoction of the right concentration of Tambuti leaves. And this is one of the only trees out here that will produce lovely autumnal colours. It will eventually go sort of reds and maroons. The rest of the trees just turn yellow and the leaves fall off. But this one will turn very nice colours come the winter. That is Tambuti, Spirostachys africanus. Lovely. There we go. Come on, Wendy. So my plan, I know that we were lurking on Gowrie Main Road down there. Our plan is to lurk slightly this side of it now in case she does come across. We might also come across, if she has killed, we might also come across a carcass hanging in a tree, which will give us a good place to just sort of progress from grade A lurkers to grade AAA lurkers. We'll just sit underneath the tree.
It's called campers.
Camping.
Campers.
Campers, yes. Hello, Kerry. You're wondering about mint. We were talking about the plant there. There are lots of sort of herby type plants here. Perry, not Kerry, Perry. I think I'm getting it right now. You want to know about mint, if we get mint here. Your fixing of the aerial leaves a lot to be desired, I have to say.
Jada's thing is fighting me.
I see. We don't get mint here. We do get a kind of version of wild mint, but it's not the same as the sort of mint you'd cook with. But we do get a kind of wild mint, and we get various other things that smell similar to the herbs that you might cook with, a wild saffron, a wild sage, a wild aniseed. None of them anything like as strongly flavored as the herbs that you know. Just keep an eye out, VMP. Hanging, draped in one of the marula trees here might be either a leopard or the kill of a leopard.
There was a giant pig crossing the road.
There was a pig crossing the road, was there? Where did it go? It seems to be a very scared pig. Well, I do not see it anymore. So we'll have a quick look down here at Treehouse Dam, or Lake Treehouse, and then continue in our parallel motion with Gowrie Main Road. It would be so very nice to see the Queen and her babies, George and Charlotte. Yes, thank you, Safari Dean. They may indeed be having a Mother's Day brunch up one of the trees. We will keep our eyes on the trees in case Mother's Day brunch. Is Mother's Day only tomorrow? It's not today, is it? Of course, in my family, every day is Mother's Day. That's what we tell my mum. She doesn't believe us, though. Nothing. The last time I saw life at Lake Treehouse was just prior to the last ice age. Look, Wium, there's nothing. Oh, there's a baboon. We saw their tracks coming across here. They are so terrified of vehicles, these baboons. Makes no sense to me. They have no experience of vehicles here. Let's just go up the road there a little bit. I do want to come back down here, though, and go down that road there. Because I think these baboons are going to run away from us. No, they are very, very skittish, these things. Jeff, you say you've always liked Congress of baboons as a collective noun. You were talking to Jamie about the collective nouns. You say you feel it's a little condescending to them. I'm not sure that it is. Of course, it's not a biological term, a Congress of baboons. In fact, this might be the very first time I've heard it. A baboon, I have to tell you, it would be difficult to be too condescending to a baboon. They are wonderful to observe, but my goodness, they are quite, they represent to me sort of the primate in its most primitive form. And if you've ever, no, these guys are running away, I'm afraid. If you've ever been into a lodge, there will always be a story that somebody will be able to tell you about baboons getting into a room and what they do to a room when they get into it. And it's a new level. And there's a story that I relate quite regularly that was told to me by a sort of doyen of hospitality. There was an Arab prince coming to one of these lodges, I think it was at Londolozi. Arab prince coming to a lodge. He had booked out the entire place. He had an entourage of, I don't know, maybe 40 people. But there were a number of 2 or 3 wives, and he had a hairdresser and a chef and a private massage therapist, you name it, he had it, bodyguards, everything. Anyway, it was an extremely important kind of thing that they got everything absolutely tickety-boo for this fellow. Otherwise, he was going to be deeply dissatisfied, get back in his private jet and fly off back to wherever it was that he came from, to whatever desert oasis that he emerged out of. And what he did was, he actually turned out to be a very nice fellow, but just as he was arriving, they went to do a final check of the room, and they opened up the door to the room, and a troop of baboons had got into the suite. And what they had done is that they had eaten all the snacks. They had opened all the beers in the minibar. He wasn't obviously that devout, by just biting through the cans and then drinking them. They had drunk all the miniatures in the minibar by smashing them and then sort of licking the stuff off the floor. They had, looking for tracks here, they had slept on the bed. There were 2 of them hanging from a ceiling fan, spinning round and round. They'd broken the mirror because one of them had thought it was another baboon and attacked the mirror in the bathroom. And what a baboon does, wherever he is relieve himself. He does not have any troubles with his bowels, and the place smelled like something out of the bowels of hell. And this is what happened. As the plane was landing on the airstrip, this Arab chap was about to come down to the room, and his room had been destroyed by a gang of baboons. They were still in there, going ballistic, because of then now all the staff went in to try and clean the place, and the baboons were still in there. So they went crazy. They relieved themselves further in their terror, and they left eventually sort of broke out of a bathroom window, disappeared into the bush. And all of the staff descended on the place to clean it up. The prince was on the deck by this stage having his welcome drink, insisting that he go to his room. And they were sort of holding him on the deck by saying, well, we've just seen a leopard down there. And then a ranger would pop out around the corner and say, oh, it's just down here. So they'd rush off there, and then another one would pop up somewhere else and say, oh, it's just down here. All of them constantly on the radio with the cleanup team in the room. And eventually they got the room clean in about 20 minutes, but the smell was unfathomable. So what they did was they found some elephant dung nearby. They put it on the lawn just outside the room, and they sprayed it with water. It was very old elephant dung. It wasn't fresh at all. And they said, we'll just have to tell him that this is what smells, and that the elephants come so close, and that's why it smells like this. Anyway, as they the last cleaner went out the front of the room, he came in through the main entrance, and everything seemed to be okay. And I related that story in a book called A Year in the Wild. And people often ask me, you know, you must have exaggerated quite a lot in the book, and I did. But that story itself, it was told verbatim. That's exactly what happened, and that's why baboons, of course, are, to me, they're a source of profound amusement. I don't, so when you call them a congress and say it's condescending, I don't think it's condescending in the slightest. I think they are such gangsters that they couldn't care less. So that was a long way, Jeff, of saying I don't think it's condescending. Monkey Man, you say, is it possible that this could be a new troop of baboons that's moved into the area, and because we're seeing them for the first time? I'm going to suggest that I think this is not a new troop of baboons. I think it's a troop of baboons that has been lurking around Chitra, Cheetah Plains probably, and maybe a couple of the other camps around here. I think they've probably been causing absolute havoc around there, and I suspect that they've been tossed out of there. It could be a dispersal group. You know, it wouldn't surprise me to know that those lodges had had enough of them and had sort of, I don't know, taken to flinging the odd rock at them every so often to make them go away. And so now they've moved up into this area. That's probably what's happened. It could be a dispersal group, though, a group of youngsters who've leaving their natal troop and they're coming up. That would explain why they're nervous of vehicles. The fact that they're nervous of vehicles is not, I don't really know how to explain that, because if they were camp baboons, because you do get camp baboons basically who live in these camps until you chase them out, they're not afraid of vehicles at all. They'll sit very close by and just get on with life. So I'm not sure. But hopefully they will hang around, because they are the most fascinating creatures. You can sit and watch a troop of baboon for hours and basically just laugh consistently. And it's mainly because they are so human in their actions and in their expressions. And so it just becomes so amusing because we see ourselves in them so very clearly. Yeah, ex-Ranger, I think a very good suggestion here. You're saying perhaps a baboon troop should be known as a hooligan of baboon troops. Yes. After soccer hooligans, they certainly do resemble soccer hooligans in many, many respects. I have found no further tracks of Karula. Let's go down and have a quick look at Twin Dams. One more foray along Gowrie Main, and then we'll go somewhere else. I'm not sure where Jamie is. I know that the lions didn't make it to the... Well, not yet. They haven't made it to the carcass yet. But a tawny eagle came down, so that was the first bird. And after the tawny eagle, of course, then the vultures will come. But it has not heated up. So it's after 8 o'clock now. There's no heat in the air, and I don't see any rising vultures. I think there's a front coming through. So you might... Oh, there we go. There's a battalier. Now, battalier and tawny eagle, everybody, are often the first to carcasses. We're a long way from that carcass, and so I don't think this battalier will be able to see it. But certainly just starting to get up into the air now, because there's obviously sufficient warmth for that bird. Flies much lower down than a vulture is able to, and so they don't need quite as much heat. Thank you, Wium. And so the vultures will take a little bit more time to get up into the air.
What's your monitor going at?
I can't see the monitor. The sun's shining on it. Hello, Brian. Yes, you say earlier on I mentioned the Atlas bear, which lives in the mountains, or used to live in the mountains of Atlas, up in North Africa, in Morocco. You say is it the same region that the Barbary lion came from? It's exactly the same region, yeah. A whole suite of different animals that came from that sort of unique, what would we call it? I suppose it's a unique ecosystem, a unique environment, unique region, which would have brought about a whole suite of different species. Though I did read something, and I mean, I need to do a bit more research on this, that the Atlas bear may have been an escapee, you know, a kind of feral population of bears that got off ships coming from Spain, because I'm not sure how they would have got across the Mediterranean unless they came in from the Middle East, which is not impossible. But how they would have hopped across the Rock of Gibraltar, I'm not sure. Right, Jamie's actually got an animal to show you, so that's important. Let's go and have a look at that. We'll do one more drive along Gowrie Main Road.
No, don't. I thought our animal was going to run away, but luckily he's just turned around to continue feeding. A magnificent waterbuck bull in the prime of his life. Dense, very stocky bodies when you compare them to a kudu, an antelope that's of a similar size. And with his thick, shaggy fur, he's quite smelly. And to go back to our collective noun conversation, trying to think of an appropriate collective noun. I feel as though a stink of waterbuck, rather than a herd, is perhaps a more appropriate one, because they do carry a very pungent, almost wet dog type smell. Very oily, very musky scent. And that comes from the oil that coats their fur. It allows them to, as their name suggests, spend a great deal of time in water. He's got those magnificent ridges on his set of horns. Now, a lot of antelope have sort of keratin-like ridges or rings along their horns, which gradually smooth out with age. Well, as I said, he is fully mature. Look at him with his heart-shaped nose. Isn't he beautiful? Those could actually serve quite a useful function whilst fighting another male, to stop the horns from sliding down too fast towards the sensitive brain and the eyes of the face. If you could sort of understand what I mean, they almost act as a stopper, like a series of speed bumps whilst clashing with another male. That's not a very clear view. Let's try and move back a little bit so that we can see him. Now, James has been checking very carefully where Karula crossed out. I've actually come to a similar area. I'm not too far away from where James is, but I'm working in the opposite direction. We're kind of doing circles within circles. Gentle head shake. I think he's going to move off. Oh, no, there's obviously a nice juicy patch of grass there. And they are mixed feeders, so mostly grass-based diet at this time of year, but they'll have to rely more and more on the leaves of the trees as we go further into the dry season. And there is that peculiar white ring around the rump. Now, chatting a little bit about the feeding habits of the different animals, Susan was asking a question about a conversation topic that it comes up periodically and has clearly been discussed recently, and that is the defense mechanism with which trees respond to being fed upon. So essentially what happens, to summarize it, is that once a tree starts to be attacked, sort of in inverted commas, of being fed on by a kudu or an elephant or anything of similar that wants to feed on it, it will start to release a chemical tannin. So the tannins make the leaves particularly bitter and unpalatable. So whilst it's still edible, the animals don't tend to enjoy it. And not only do they release the tannins, but they release chemicals into the air, or pheromones into the air, that stimulate the production in the leaves of the surrounding trees as well. Which is why most of the time, when you watch an animal feeding, it will feed into the wind, so away from the direction in which the wind is blowing those tannins and those chemicals to inspire the other trees to do the same. And they also feed into the wind, of course, because that way they can smell any predators that might be in front of them. Now, Susan, you were wondering, how long does it take for the plant to return to its original state? It depends on the extent or the degree of feeding that has happened upon that tree, and it depends on the species of tree as well. So I've read things that say anywhere from a couple of hours to up to 2 weeks. Now, there was a lot of research that was done into feeding of animals, but again, something like this is so area specific that the same research might not apply to an area like the Sabi Sands. But I did do some reading of a research paper that actually basically suggested that the animals that feed often do so in almost a 2-week cycle of moving through an area. But you'll probably find that that was a research study conducted in an area that could quite possibly be closed or fenced, so the animals don't have a choice but to rotate in that way. And it's incredible the way that the animals have evolved so as not to overutilize an area. So they are as crucial to the plant's survival and the number of species diversity in this area as the plants are to providing them with nutrients and with food. So that constant feeding will actually, in the growth season, stimulate the growth of the grass. They've got specific, grasses have evolved to be eaten. So they've got specific growth points at several places on the shoot or on the stem of the grass, which allows them to recover almost instantaneously from the munching of animals. And of course, the animals untouched will never destroy an ecosystem. So we've spoken a lot about favourite collective nouns. James Richard has asked for a little bit of fun. If I could take my favourite features from antelope and create my own unique species, what would I choose? Sure, okay. So I'm thinking along the lines of a sable's horns and maybe even a sable's body shape. Sable to me are one of the most beautiful antelope, but there's also the ngala bulls. So I'm trying to think if I could figure it out. So let's say we've got the shaggy ngala coat, but the color of a sable, on the slender body of a kudu with the backward curved horns of a sable. There we go, we have my creation there. That's a very rapid fire response. It would be called a... it's a bit tricky. An enable do. Okay, we have gone now. We have trespassed into the realms of the ridiculous once again. But our waterbuck has disappeared, so we can continue on our search for Karula. Navel do. Does that work? A sable, nyala, and a kudu I'm enjoying the image that my combination has conjured up, but I think that James has actually found an existing antelope for you, a real live actual antelope. So let's go and have a look and see which one he's got.
No, I have not found an animal. I don't know why Jamie thought I had. I have found absolutely nothing since I last saw you. I did see 2 warthogs rushing off as fast as they could to get away from us. We're heading up towards quarantine clearings where maybe those baboons will have reached by now. We'll see if they don't wish to have a look at us where they can see us from a bit more distance. Lovely question that about the favorite or the antelope features that you'd put together. I have to agree with Jamie that I think sable would be the colour that I would choose, the coat of a sable antelope. Possibly not shaggy like I don't think I would want mine to be shaggy like a ngala or like a waterbuck, so I would go with the short-haired sable-coloured coat. Possibly the horns of a kudu. I know that's obvious, but I think the horns of a kudu. Tail of a gemsbok, I think. Very nice gemsbok tail. What other features would we have, I suppose? The head, or markings. I suppose we could have some markings. Markings of a bushbuck. I like the markings of a bushbuck. A couple of spots. I suppose that would be my antelope. And size? I think a size would be large, yes. It would probably be about ear-length sized. And what would I call it? I would call it the James buck, yes, instead of the Gems buck, you mean? Yes. What a very good idea, Wium. A gemsbok, everybody, is an oryx, to those of you who don't speak Afrikaans. An oryx in Afrikaans, a gemsbok. What is a gem, Wium?
Walter, but isn't it a gemsbok in English as well? And oryx is the Latin name?
No, it's known as an oryx. I think a gemsbok is just what English people who live in South Africa call it.
No, gems is not a word.
No. Gemsbok. I might be wrong. Highly unlikely, of course, but it's not possible. Right, we're going to move on to quarantine clearings here and see if I can find some form of animal. It'll be so exciting. Not sure where Jamie is at the moment, but it might be if she's anywhere near that wildebeest, it might be a good time to just pass by there. I think those lions obviously went to sleep, didn't bother about it. Aubrey was around the wildebeest earlier, and he did see a tawny eagle there. And Jamie is also looking for Karula, apparently. Apparently, while we were driving along, just when I was showing you that Boertie leaf, there was a tractor driving along the main road there, and I think that would have obliterated any old tracks. So any leopard tracks that we find on that road now will be inescapably fresh. Now let us have a look, see if those baboons have arrived. They have not, nor has anything else. See that, Wium? Indeed, it seems to be entirely clear of any form of mammal life here. We might even, we're most likely to find Eugene driving along to breakfast. Blue Butterfly, I think you're asking... Let me just get this question correct. Butterfrog? It's an Impala, everybody. Stop the press. There we go. Blue Butterfrog, you want to know what is behind the nickname that I've given to Jamie, which is pajamas. I don't really know, actually. It's just Jamie's, Jamie, Jamie's pajamas. That's how I came up with it. No one else uses it. Vium, it's the only animal we've got. There's nothing else to look at. What's wrong with it? There we go. Beautiful Impala ram in the middle of the in the middle of the rut. Okay, that's going to be it from us. Thank you, Wium, for your efforts today. Yes, impatient as they were. Let's head across to Jamie to say goodbye to her. And Blue Butterfrog, please tell us, how on earth did you get your name? Wonderful name. We'll see you this afternoon at 3 o'clock. See you then.
Not the weirdest nickname I have ever acquired, but it's certainly quite high up there on the weird nickname list. But it's one that is relatively inoffensive, so I think could probably stick the Pajamas nickname. I have to try and think of something to call James in return. Scott, of course, was responsible for giving me my first nickname when I first started working at WildEarth. He called me Jamil, and that stuck for a long time. Now, speaking of wonderful antelope, I thought about a steenbok in answer to James's question, because I just enjoy watching them so much. Tiny little creatures, but I don't think they'd be part of my... How's that for you, Jeandre? Is there a gap there? Or shall I go forward a little bit? Here we go. There's a little gap. They really are such perfect little antelope, and this is a particularly attractive one, with their white surrounding the eyes. Oh, perfect little nose. And that sort of pretty much sums up every steenbok sighting we've ever had, or most often. Is a brief view of their beautiful little faces before they decide that they are not having any of this, and off they dash. Bye-bye, little one. Been trying to show you some birds, but they keep fluttering about. Now, Sandy in Missouri, you were thinking about visiting our wonderful area, and you were just wondering, if you did, would you have to get on a small plane in order to come to the lodge? And what are the chances of seeing a kill? Not that you want to see animals hurting each other, you're just interested in the sort of the statistics and what kind of sightings you could have. Well, Sandy, it's wonderful that you are considering coming, and if you want any further details, you can actually drop Final Control an email, and we can help you out in terms of letting you know how to go about it. No, you would not have to take a small plane to get to the lodge. You might have to take a small plane to get to a town of Hoedspruit, which is a wonderful little place. You get to visit Hoedspruit Airport, which is about the size of this vehicle as a building, but it's an incredibly sweet little place and very, very friendly. And your chances of seeing a kill, almost inevitably you will see an animal feeding one of the big cats, probably a leopard or a lion, depending on how long you stay. One has to get exceptionally lucky in terms of seeing an actual kill, seeing it actually happen, but it does happen, and it's going to become more and more frequent. It's going to be easier to see, and it's going to become more and more frequent as we head into the drought. I do hope that if it is within your means that you could come and visit us and just let us know, because we can always also arrange for you to come and visit us as well. Oh, I think we have come to the end of a sunset. No, it's not a sunset safari, it's a sunrise safari. It's definitely morning. As strange as it has seemed, it is a sunrise safari. And a sunrise safari where I missed my appointment with Karula, obviously arrived late and she got tired of waiting, and missed out on the lions as well, but they could well come through. I've just heard on the radio that an elephant herd is walking straight towards them, so there's a chance that they might actually push them further south, and we'll have a chance to view them this afternoon. Thank you, Jeandre, for all of your fantastic camera work and company and conversation, as always, as well as to Louise, who was directing the show, and Rebecca, who was helping her out in final control. Most importantly, thank you to all of you out there across the globe for sending through your questions and your comments, and sometimes taking us into the realm of the bizarre but nevertheless enjoyable, and for always sticking with us and enjoying the wildlife. Have a wonderful day or evening wherever you are in the world, and we'll catch you this afternoon. Bye-bye.